Hello, everybody. It's Dave Neal, stand-up comic and host of Bachelor Nation News with an update on the Clayton Echard v. Jane Doe paternity scandal rocking the world. The trial is in 1 week. 1 week from now, we'll know what the heck is going down. But in the meantime, very volatile stuff happening online in a fight between Jane Doe's attorney and, I guess, Clayton's attorney, although Clayton's attorney doesn't go on Twitter, so it's kind of just like a one-way fight. A lot of time being spent. I know, the older generation always says, the younger generation's always on their phone. Well, will you please get your dad? Jane Doe's attorney here is smearing. I mean, whether, he believes it or not, it's a real smear campaign. Clayton's attorney, Greg Woodnick, and myself, to be quite honest. And now we're receiving information of maybe a sort of fake ex-boyfriend of Jane Doe, possibly also besmirching the good name of Dave Neal. Who could ever do so? Now, what you say about me is none of my business, but from the standpoint of making YouTube content, let's discuss it. All right, let's get into it. So I've got two clips I'm going to share with you from Megan Fox's live stream. I was live with her just a couple hours ago. First being this guy who may or may not be her ex-boyfriend saying why he doesn't like me so much. At the very end, I'm going to share, hold on, get your screen grabs ready. At the very end, I'm going to share the infamous email I received from Jane Doe's attorney, where he shares a story about how he made another lawyer homeless. And spoiler alert, you're going to want to stick around. He even takes the time to circle the homeless shelter he claims this other lawyer lives at. Maybe it's true. I have no idea. How is that important to me? Also, I have no idea. Is it a veiled threat to quit? I don't know. I don't know what it is, folks. He'll tell us what he says it is, but it's quite bizarre, if you ask me. So anyhow, let's get into it. Let's play the first clip. This is the email from, I guess, a guy named Tag. Now, some folks have pointed out, how ironic. Isn't it ironic, don't you think, that two possible men that have been made up by Jane Doe are named Chase and Tag? You're it. Okay. I don't know. I don't know if that's just another crazy comparison, although Tag was supposed to be a boyfriend of Jane Doe's from the 2015-2016 era. I have spoken to sources as high up the ladder as you can get, and they say they have no idea of a guy named Tag or anything that has to do with this. But either way, here's the piece of his email where he comes for me. Have a listen.
Body of work, and I do view you as a talented and professional writer and speaker.
Talking to Meg.
I do find myself having serious issues with Dave Neal, however, for reasons I honestly can't explain.
What? Join every girl I've dated.
He and I have zero connection or personal history, yet I was immediately repulsed by literally almost all of his content from day one. Everything he says or puts out online has the feeling of his hand in your pocket. And
so
I honestly,
folks think that, I guess this guy thinks that my hand is in Megan Fox's pocket, which again doesn't really quite make much sense because I was the one who was covering the story first. So I'm not trying to kiss her ass or she's not trying to kiss mine. We're just two people that have bonded in this wild story of friendship over a weird paternity scandal. I mean, what else do I have in common with alt-right Oprah? I'm kidding, folks. I'm kidding. I don't think Meg's alt-right Oprah. Maybe right-leaning Oprah. Either you get you get an ultrasound. Everybody look under your chair. Yeah, everybody gets an ultrasound. So either way, I got nice comments from people. Justice for Dave Neal. How can anyone dislike Dave Neal? Dave Neal is one of those funny, sweet-natured people who looks at the world as a glass half full. Well, I would say this. I mean, someone who might not like me would someone who may be in my path of justice. He is so fair in his reporting, and I love how her attorney tries so hard to paint him as evil, but has no evidence. Yeah, I mean, obviously we were called pond scum. We were called leeches. He doesn't want to read, he wants to read my obituary, wishing on my death. Very bizarre. I don't want to make any generational beef because I know that her attorney's kind of the same era as Megan Fox. So it's not that this whole generation thinks that way, but there are people that that think in a very classist system that, oh, I've got a law degree and you don't. You're just online. So they can kind of snub their nose at me. It doesn't bother me. Again, go by the 4 agreements. I'm very confident in my business model and what I do, and I like what I do, and I try to spread joy. On today's Rush Hour podcast, we talked a lot about optimism and how optimism is the leading indicator of success that somebody can have. Having optimism, if you said, oh, Dave, you're going to make a career as a podcaster and YouTuber, almost everybody goes broke doing that. Stand-up comedian, you want to make money, how optimistic? And I say, well, I'm going to work really hard and I'm going to defy the odds in X, Y, and Z. And when you do that, things happen. So go check out the podcast, Rush Hour Podcast, if you want to get a piece of that. So either way, it goes on and on. I'll play another second here.
I don't believe he takes any of the behavioral health implications of this seriously. Frankly, he is an unfunny vulgarian, and I take serious issue with him calling himself a journalist.
All right, I'm called an unfunny vulgarian, and this person seems to really care about whether I call myself a journalist or not. Now, obviously, you can see here, I'm aghast. What are you talking about? Come on, I'm just trying my best. I'm just a chump with a YouTube channel. Why is there so much attention on me? So when Jane Doe's attorney first emailed me this bizarre email where shared this homeless shelter with me, and by the way, I think homeless shelters are good for people to help them get back on their feet. There's no shame in at all with a homeless shelter. Even lawyers can become homeless. Sometimes they drink a lot of alcohol, and sometimes they try to cope with their issues. I know Greg Giraldo died of alcoholism. He was a very funny comedian who was a Harvard law educated lawyer. So I have a lot of compassion for people that might fall upon themselves in a homeless shelter. It doesn't mean they were bad at their job. It means they probably couldn't, had whatever addictions that caused that issue. So let's not shame homeless shelters, but I'll get into more of that after. So either way, justice for Dave Neal. And I don't need that. I appreciate the clicks, the support. If people do want to give me justice, join the Patreon. No, but either way, no, your support in patronage has been noted, and it's provided me a ton of confidence in my coverage of this, especially with these oddball smear campaigns. So, he claims I'm running some crazy cult, which maybe I am. You got to be a white guy with nice hair. If you're a white guy with nice hair, you can pretty much get anybody to do anything. Everybody sip the cold brew. I'm just a cult. What did he make you guys drink? Well, there was no potion. It was just nice cold brew. He made you drink nice cold brew. That's right. On June 10th, I'll have the cold brew for you. So either way, some very bizarre back and forths going on between Jane Doe's attorney. I have to point this out because I'm going to read for you the email that was sent to Megan Fox, which pretty much every lawyer I've ever met, every single lawyer I've talked to said they are befuddled. Is that a term? Befuddled. They are aghast. I already said that. They are confused as to how a practicing lawyer would be commenting so many things publicly when it's not important for the case. Now, as I've said, my belief is the motivation is that he was hired to really try to just wreak as much damage as possible, knowing if they do lose the case, at least they can sort of hurt the people that they're trying to go against. That's my belief. I don't know what the other intention is other than maybe having a massive ego and doesn't want like a young whippersnapper named Dave Neal to, get one up on me. But the truth is, and here's the truth, I have not lied one time. And I have not been a party to lying one time. Everything I've shared, everything I've represented has come out as the truth. Can't say the same for him, and we're going to get to that in a second. So he says, if Woodnick is so smart, because someone previously said, Mr. Jane Doe's attorney, you know well Greg Woodnick is a smart and well-accomplished attorney. Clayton's attorney. He knows this isn't a defamation case. He's prosecuting it exactly as it is, a claim brought falsely by your client. The way the public sees this case is not a reflection of Clayton's trial strategy. And that was in response to the fact that her attorney said, this is not a defamation case. Clayton thinks it is, but he's wrong. Now, they're arguing different things, right? Jane Doe's attorney this whole time has said the same thing over and over, which is, it's very simple. If she believed she was pregnant, that's all that matters. We don't need these other witnesses, X, Y, and Z. And everyone from the rooftops is shouting, yes, it shows that there is a pattern of abuse that's happening here. It goes on and on and on. So either way, they're not on the same side of this story, but it's very bizarre to have what I can only describe as a dick measuring contest. And if there's ever any evidence as to why men shouldn't be in positions of power and shouldn't rule the world and shouldn't rule countries, It is because of the fragile ego that we have. I mean, so fragile. Now, me, it's like, look, he's not going to bait me into a fight. Like, what is this guy going to do? Fight me? And I've had to consider this. Like, is he going to try to, like, come on my live stream and, like, one-up me or make me look stupid? Really, pretty much anything he would do would only work against him as long as I have it on camera. That's the beauty of being on camera, which is that, like, you can't muscle me the way you're trying to muscle me. It just doesn't work. It has a reverse effect. It shows, I don't want to say he's insecure, but it shows how insecure the argument is, which is that I'm some awful guy. Why am I so obsessed with this trial? Whatever. So he says, if Woodnick is so smart, why did he file a Rule 26 motion? And by the way, do I think Jane Doe's attorney is obsessed with this Rule 26 motion? I don't know if he's obsessed, but it's literally all he talks about. He doesn't talk about whether or not he believes his client is credible, because he already said she's got credibility issues. He's already said she's made misstatements. She's already admitted to fabricating medical fraud. By kind of talking about Rule 26, it's almost like trying to pull our focus away from the facts of the case, focus in facts that we will not be pulled away from. So he says all of this, like, why did he file Rule 26 motion, ignoring the requirements of that rule, which he later drops? I believe he dropped it out of good faith to simplify the argument, because he didn't want this whole thing to be a battle of semantics. That's my belief. I know Woodnick has since said he regrets dropping the motion, because then he saw that Jane Doe's attorney wasn't operating in good faith in that, whatever. So Fen Church here says, I think he dropped it for reasons different than you believe. I think his position would be that Clayton's well-spoken correspondence that he would seek legal action if she continued her fraud before she filed would be sufficient. But hey, even smart lawyers make mistakes. And he said, and then Jane Doe's attorney said, and as for thinking well-spoken correspondence satisfies the rule, there's so much binding authority to the contrary. Any lawyer who didn't know this is violating the ethical rules. I'm not a lawyer, but I do believe that the judge already said, even if it's not Rule 26 that they're arguing over, that the judge can place sanctions on their own. Darney has said, dude, he outlined his reasoning explicitly twice in his filings in extensive detail. Withdrawing a motion is not an admission of that motion being invalid. Excuse me. This oops, I didn't follow the rules argument is a 12-year-old thought process, not a legal one. Interesting. So we continue on and on. He also argues there is absolutely positively not a reasonable person standard in determining if a woman is pregnant or how Jane Doe is allowed to act. Thus, I will not have to get past that. This is not a defamation case, as we should. So they go over, the same thing I just shared with you guys. Someone said there is a medical standard for verification of pregnancy, though. It's an ultrasound, a valid, non-doctored ultrasound. She hasn't produced one of those, though. So how does one get past that? And again, how bizarre. He stops responding to these very specific questions. So he's busy replying to everybody except those that present him with facts, which is probably why he blocked Greg Gillespie when Greg Gillespie shared facts. He said, I've never seen the Fiverr thing, and then we shared evidence, and he doesn't respond. Excuse me, Mr. Gingras Esquire, before I go homeless, I would love for you, because I don't know how the Wi-Fi is at the homeless shelter. Maybe it's good. Maybe is it 3G? What is it? Before I go homeless, I just want to know, did you watch the video I made over the weekend that showed you all the evidence you claim to want to see? I wouldn't want to make him go into a homeless shelter. Why not? Because I'm not an evil person. I wish him the best. To be quite honest, I wish him all the best. I want him to succeed in life. Maybe our optimism would wear off on him. And he goes, you know what? Oh, boy, I should, join the other. I don't know, whatever. I get it. He's cashing his check. He needs to do this. But he doesn't need to do the Twitter unless that's part of the agreement, in which is he's on retainer to really, do some smeared job damage. I have no idea. He said, all Woodnick did before me was demand Jane Doe sign something she was never pregnant. That's a settlement offer, not a Rule 26 compliant safe harbor notice. Those are two different things. And by the way, the dating contract was also a settlement offer, inadmissible per Rule 408. And then someone responded, actually, that was Jane Doe's previous attorney who did that. The one she filed a claim against, Lexi Lindvall. Do you even know your client's history? So it's so funny. It appears as though Jane Doe's attorney was claiming that he was the one doing that admission, when in fact it was her own attorney who wanted her to admit guilt. Darnia said, in the case you cited, the 10-day notice is not just to withdraw, but also or appropriately correct the alleged violation. The or alternatively is very important there because the offer to officially sign something stated she was never pregnant does satisfy this very clearly. And he goes back and forth. AZ Techie said, just curious, how do you know this if you haven't watched the hearings? And again, I don't think we're getting any responses. It's one of those things. I get that Twitter's kind of confusing, like, what do you respond to? And to be quite honest, I was so close to responding to her attorney on Twitter. And I said, you know what? No, that's not my game. My game is YouTube, where I condescend. You know what I mean? Like being condescending and being like, told you so. And also, YouTube's where I can show the evidence of my work. I don't just have to type things out and say, I don't have any time. I got all the time in the world to do this. So anyway, it goes back and forth. I don't think there's any other comments from him, but I do want to share for those that aren't a part of our Patreon. The Patreon has all the tea here. I mean, we've literally got everyone sharing the screen grabs. There's a whole Twitter thread of what's going on. Everyone says things that turn out to be wrong sometimes. I've done this at least twice in this case. And the last time I learned about it, I filed a notice to correct my misstatement. And I think what he's referring to is a misstatement he made about one of the experts, like not a big deal. So he's admitting to misstatements that kind of are really irrelevant, but he's not admitting to, understanding the scope of which his client is lying. Except for a few things. Like he's admitted that his client lied about the HCG, but he's tried his best to avoid the Fiverr. And you might say, why does the Fiverr logo matter? It's with Greg Gillespie and X. Well, because he's going to be a witness and they're going to talk about it. So anyhow, he said, what does Clayton gain? Woodnick lied to the court to make the judge hate Laura. Woodnick claimed she said things like this in her depo, which she never said. The point of lying about this, he wanted to inflame and bias the judge, and it seems to have worked. So now, this is wild, right? Now we've got, and again, these screen grabs are all available on the Patreon, patreon.com/Dave Neal. If you're ever going to spend $5, June 2024 might be the month. I'm just saying there's a lot happening right now. So he's now saying that the judge is inflamed and biased. Wow. What else did he say here? I'm trying to think if there's anything else. And then there's some so then we have let's see if we can present this here. Why am I not seeing? Oh, Woodnick stated explicitly in his pleadings she did use the Planned Parent sonogram in a proceeding as an exhibit. He asked her about it, and she said yes during deposition. Look at her deposition again. She admits it was an exhibit by Bonnie Slater, one of her many lawyers. So some of these lies that he's accused of saying Woodnick committed are then just clearly shown by the deposition. And he says, you are assuming everything Woodnick says is accurate. Based on my experience with him, I would not make that assumption. He has made statements to me and to the court that were categorically false. I know most folks don't care about this, but I do. All right, so this is where you say, all right, Gingers, cut the bullshit. You can't talk about your moral sort of superiority here when your client is lying through her ass. She's literally lying through her ass when it comes to everything she presented as 100% true or 100% false. Every single one of those times that she categorically denied something, we have the evidence showing she lied. Evidence showing she lied to the point where then I was the one accused of trying to wreak havoc on her and that I was making things up. He even accused me of lying. Her attorney accused me of maybe being one who planted some of this evidence in the Chase J. Jones stuff. Trust me, we have multiple sources for the Chase J. Jones stuff that leads back to her phone number. Well, maybe somebody used it. Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, back in October, someone created a GoDaddy account with Jane Doe's phone number. Yeah, I'm sure they did that. So anyhow, let's continue. Here's Woodnick, the man that he's accusing of being very unethical, accused of lying. And look, do I think, am I here pimping for Woodnick? No, but I mean, give the guy a fair shot. He's very well respected. We help people navigate unpleasant life situations. That's what he says. Let's see, what does he say here? I currently serve as the chairman of the State Bar of Arizona's Client Protection Fund. Prior to being a trustee, I was appointed to the Arizona Supreme Court's task force on the Arizona Rules of Family Law Procedure. A member member of the National Child Abuse Defense and Resource Center. Fortunate in career to receive recognition for my efforts. 2012 and 2015 named Mentor of the Year by the Arizona Children's Law Center. If you have made it this far and wonder what I am like in real life, you can always find me following my teen boys to their sporting events, binging Netflix, listening to podcasts, and running slowly. So there he is. He's a man for the people. He supports women's rights, and he's an advocate for free speech. I mean, all these. Look, I don't have to sell him. That's not my point. I'm not on his payroll. I'm not in his pocket. This is just what you see. You see the way that this is all playing out. And don't take my word for it. Again, I will share this with you in a second. Don't take my word for it. Here is a lawyer emailing Megan Fox. Again, we just played this, sharing how poetic it is the way Woodnick is handling this case. And look, no lawyer's perfect. You do what you got to do sometimes. I understand that. But like a little projection here from Gingras. So maybe he's upset he's not getting the attention. Maybe he's upset at himself for just betting on the wrong horse here, no pun intended. But listen to this email from this lawyer.
In my opinion, I love this email so much. This case is an epic shit show.
By the way, someone in the Patreon chat says, if Chase J. Jones is so real, Gingras should have no problem getting him to show up to defend Jane Doe on June 10th.
But maybe some good can come out of it for Clayton Echard and the other victims, future family court litigants, and maybe even Laura herself, if she settles. That's a different conversation, and probably one better had with Lauren or Dr. Shannon Curry from the Depp trial. Here's
Mommy muffins.
Yeah, mommy muffins. Here's my answer to the blog question, because I asked this person, tell me as an attorney how you feel about him allowing his client to post that borderline suicide threat on his blog, right? This is what the response was. I have never seen a lawyer publish such a self-indulgent and unprofessional blog as Dingus has done. No one in D.C. would spew this verbal diarrhea for adversaries, potential clients, the bar, and peers to read and dissect. She might be referred for a urine test or an intervention if they did. I can't imagine, and this person was a attorney in D.C., by the way. I can't imagine what he was thinking when he started taunting, baiting, and berating people for supporting Clayton Echard and some podcaster who dared to question his litigious client's behavior and evidence, as well as his own legal tactics. It's counterproductive and unbillable. Instead of drunk blogging and trying to engage with the Twitterverse, he should be reading everything in the file and conferring with his client and opposing counsel and trying to settle this while he still can. It's what the judge wants. Does he think he's preserving the record for an appeal? Oy vey, hard no. Family court practice is not criminal defense work or a blood sport. But Dingus apparently thinks winning in this arena, or maybe just this case, means inflicting permanent damage on anyone who has dumped or criticized Laura. It's insane, and it's a really stupid legal strategy.
That's what I'm saying when it comes to inflicting permanent damage. It's like, why is it so personal to him? Is he Jane Doe's uncle or something? Like, what kind of bonus is he? Does he get a bonus if I cry on camera? Like, what's he trying to do?
Legal whack-a-mole. The only rabbit Dingus pulled from his hat was the first Rule 26 pleading that I would bet money he uses frequently in his regular practice. I'd check, but my days of free LexisNexis are over. That brief contained a mostly straightforward legal argument, and Woodnick gave him respect for it. But it wasn't checkmate or even check, and that's the last I've seen of real lawyering from Dingus. Woodnick is a scholar who wields a pen like it's a scalpel, and this guy is just a wannabe gladiator with a bread knife and an inflated opinion of his writing skills and legal prowess.
Yikes. Wields a scalpel. Okay, so wields his pen like a scalpel. Oh, boy. I mean, and again, this is a random lawyer, but this is like every lawyer that we're talking to, everyone who comes out of the woodwork goes, I can't believe her attorney is live tweeting. Like, there's almost no precedence of this happening before.
Ooh. Isn't that good? That's my favorite part. This is my favorite part of this.
Scalpel.
She's not wrong. It's not wrong. I mean,
he's got beautifully written responses.
Beautiful responses. There are sentences in Greg Woodnick's filings that I have to stop and read unless you're on the record and say it all in the pleadings or negotiations.
So he says basically say it in the pleadings or don't say it at all. If you're not on the record, what you're saying doesn't matter.
Good lawyers, I love this part. Good lawyers help their clients resolve their issues. They're not supposed to hurt their cause, dig a deeper hole, or hand the client a shovel to dig it for themselves. Moreover, we have a duty to protect our clients, and sometimes that means protecting them from themselves and their own worst instincts. If we can do that, we should withdraw if the court permits. If we can't do that, we should withdraw if the court permits. Judge Mata will not allow withdrawal on the eve of trial, though. His blog has been especially counterproductive in that giving Laura a platform for her dawn to dusk pity party has exposed more of her credibility issues, provided Woodnick with more evidence he can use to impeach her testimony, and it probably damaged his own credibility with the court as well. And publishing the fake suicide note, that was over the line, in my humble opinion. But the Arizona Code of Conduct only addresses what a lawyer should do if a client is too impaired to appreciate their situation or assist in their case, or in real exigent circumstances. It doesn't address letting a client express her suicidal ideation in paragraph form on your webpage, or advise how to handle clients who are so manipulative and infantile that they threaten suicide on a regular basis to get their way. If Dingus thought publishing JD's self-sabotaging fake suicide note was a valid legal tactic to get a continuance, for example, or to appease a difficult client, he is mistaken. If he wanted to provoke JFC or media into attacking JD to get the judge to close the courtroom or give him grounds to file a harassment case against Dave, he misread the room, and it did not move the ball down the field in the instant case. He didn't gain any sympathy to use as leverage for a settlement either. And if he took her note seriously, well then, I think he was morally, although maybe not legally, obligated to call in a welfare check or get Laura's family to get her admitted for care instead of publishing it. In his place, I would have at least called her parents to encourage them to seek immediate professional help. But the worst thing he did was to leave the blog open for comments after publishing her post when he knows that his so-called fragile client will read them, obsess over them, and use them as an excuse for, I don't know what, but it won't be pretty. He handed her a shovel instead. That is unconscionable.
He handed her a shovel instead. And some people are calling this a mic drop moment. So because of that, I brought my own mic to drop. There it is, your mic drop moment. Wild stuff. Absolutely wild stuff there. Again, just an email from someone who knows more than I do. Again, I'm just an idiot with a public school education. You know what I mean? I don't know what I'm doing here. But I'll tell you what I do know. I do know ethics of just trying to get it right. Just the effort of trying to get it right is so important. So as promised, here's the last part of this email. Just so you guys can see, this email is super long. It's super long. I don't want to share it all with you right now. I'll tell you what, you know what I'll do? You know what I'll do? Today, I'll give this email to the Patreon. Why not? Let's give it to the Patreon. Because this is what we're working against. This is the blueprint of what we're working against. So this whole email, one of the first ones I ever got, which starts by saying, there's two different emails here. Oh, there's two different emails. All right, I'll get them to you. Give me some time. I'll get them to the Patreon. If you guys join today, I'll get them to the Patreon. But either way, this is how it ends up. This is how the story ends. The homeless shelter conversation. Let's see. Finally, I want to share a quick story. And again, this was written to me and my lawyer. How bizarre. He asked me not to share the other one, but clearly he's got no problem sharing, all these, depositions and ripping up wounds from these other guys. Why not share an email from a lawyer to a journalist? Finally, and this is, again, part 4, so I'll save part 1, 2, and 3 for the Patreon. Finally, I wanted to share a quick story that is mostly for Dave, because this is with my lawyer as well. The purpose of this story is to emphasize the absolute life or death importance of being honest, never lying, and never continuing forward as a lawyer when you know your client is lying. This is proof of how serious I am about that point. This email was sent to me on April 8th. So he's life or death serious about not continuing on when you know your client is lying. Now, we know right now that this is hogwash because Yeah, I mean, what, hello, because now he's admitted his client lied. Here's the story. In 2010, one of my clients, a website called ripoffreport.com, was sued in Los Angeles. The plaintiff claimed he had 6 negative posts of my client's website. He claimed he called the website owner, who published his home phone number on his website, and asked him to remove those 6 posts. He claimed during these calls, the website owner demanded $5,000 and a monthly payment of a few hundred to remove the posts. Based on this, the plaintiff filed suit in California state court, alleging, among other things, RICO racketeering predicated on extortion, the demand for money to remove the posts. I removed the case to federal court and started looking into what happened. As it turns out, my client was absolutely crazy, but he was also smart. He had a system that automatically recorded all incoming phone calls. Arizona is a one-party state. Once the plaintiff disclosed the dates of the calls to me, it was easy to find the tapes of all those calls. And guess what? Every word of the plaintiff's story was false. He did call several times, but my client either hung up on him or just told him to send an email instead. He never asked for a penny. I disclosed these tapes to the plaintiff after I took his depo and after he perjured himself by saying the story and the complaint was true. I then told his counsel, who was sitting in the room, that if he did not withdraw from the case, bad things would happen. Sure enough, this poor kid, the lawyer, did not withdraw from the case. I ended up winning on summary judgment, and after it was over, I sued the lawyer and his client in federal court in Arizona for malicious prosecution. If you look at the lawyer's California bar record today, you will notice he is no longer practicing. This was his last case. And look at the address listed, 601 San Pedro Street. That's a effing homeless shelter. And before I crushed this kid and ruined his life, he was unbelievably arrogant, telling me I had no idea what I was doing and he was going to win the case, and my client was the one lying. I gave him multiple warnings that he needed to be careful, and the kid ignored them all at his peril. Honestly, that story makes me sad. I'm not proud of destroying anyone's life or career, but when a bad guy breaks the law by lying in court, that is where I draw the line, because I don't want to be Dan Blackhurt living in a homeless shelter. And there he shows the address right there. How sad is that, guys? He said, I feel bad, but he's taking credit for ending this guy's kind of career. Look, I don't know anything about that story, but the fact that that happened isn't nearly as important as the fact that he decided to share that with me. What the hell is he trying to do? Wear my head on a stake? You know? Share with his next clients that he got a YouTuber, I don't know, put into a homeless shelter? What is he trying to do? I think when things like this happen, it's important to share them publicly because it's odd. And if he's doing this to other journalists or YouTubers, I think it's important that we all share our notes. Who knows? Maybe he's just trying to rough me up. But why? And of course, he sent this to me on the morning of my baby shower. Yeah, maybe it's just what coincided, but just seems like a real way to rough me up. I mean, I don't know what the intention is. Either way, I'll share that full letter on Patreon. And maybe the other one too, patreon.com/Dave Neal. Mindy in the comment section said, Dave, you would never end up in a homeless shelter. He's off his rocker. Shannon said, Dingus is mad. You make more money than him. Bruce said, intimidation always favors secrecy. Yeah. Well, to be quite honest, this was from nearly 2 months ago, and it still is kind of painful to read. Not necessarily for my sake, but for this other guy that had to deal with him. I mean, you know, I don't know what to say about it, but it speaks volumes to me that that's not the type of people I want to be associated with. All right. Well, I am live on Patreon if you want to see the behind the scenes of all of this or join the chat. Trust me when I say this new information is going to have people talking. Patreon.com/Dave Neal. We'll be back this afternoon with an episode of the Rush Hour podcast with Dave Neal. We'll see you then. Bye, everyone.